1. I'm currently 29 years old and I can remember it like it was yesterday. When I was 6 years old, I was in bed trying to go to sleep. I started feeling a bit anxious, so I got up out of bed and walked around my room to try to shake the feeling. Then as I got near my bedroom door, I started feeling scared. I opened my door and stepped out onto the landing. Then out of nowhere, a figure which looked like a man ran past me and disappeared. I quickly turned around and ran straight back into my bedroom. The next day I told my parents what had happened. My dad laughed at me, saying I imagined it, as he doesn't believe in anything paranormal. But my mum looked confused. A couple years back, I was talking to my auntie about it, and she told me my cousin saw the exact same thing I did when he was little, but she ignored what he was telling her, as she probably thought he was making it up. I will never forget the spooked look on her face. There was another incident when I was not that much older. I was in bed, fast asleep, when I got woken up by some weird noise. When I looked up, I could see my door handle slowly going down. I thought it could have been either my mum or dad checking in on me, but the door never opened. So I lay back down to go back to sleep. But I could feel like someone was sitting on my bed. I sat up and looked, and there was what looked like an oldish woman stroking the bottom of my bed. Then she got up and disappeared. I didn't move as I was so scared and had no idea what was going on. I explained to my dad, and when I described the woman, my dad's eyes widened, and he said it sounds like his mum. What scared me is I described my nan perfectly, but I had no idea what she looked like, as she passed away when my dad was 16. And I haven't seen a picture of her. I put it all to the back of my mind and didn't think about it since. When I got pregnant with my first child, I started feeling a presence, especially when I went upstairs. And it wasn't a nice feeling. I tried to ignore it and carried on with my day. After my daughter was born, she was a few months old, and she was asleep in her cot. I had my baby monitor switched on. After an hour, I could hear something through the monitor, so I turned it up, and I could hear it clearly, and it sounded like something was walking around the room she was in. Then it went silent. My heart was pounding, so I got up to go to her. Then the silence was broken with my little girl crying. I ran up the stairs, grabbed her straight away, and brought her downstairs. After that day, the feeling was gone, and nothing happened. That was until she was 2 or 3 years old. We were upstairs. When it was time to go back down, I was waiting by the stairs to help my daughter down. She was happy, with a really big smile on her face. And all of a sudden the smile just disappeared and her eyes widened. I tried to calm her down and call her to me, but she was just standing there looking scared. Then she looked up by her right side, and she let out a big scream and ran towards me so fast, nearly knocking me down the stairs. I calmly picked her up and walked down the stairs with her. When we got near the bottom, she looked up the stairs and suddenly jolted backwards like something or someone was charging towards her. She screamed and hit her face in my neck. At that point, my heart was pounding. I raced down the stairs into the living room, slamming the door behind me. I rang my mum to see where she was so I could go to her. Luckily, she just finished work, so I got me and my girl ready and left the house quickly. 2 years ago, my daughter was in her room asleep. Then I heard her crying, so I went to check on her to make sure she was okay. She was crying that much, I couldn't understand what she was trying to say. So I took her to my room to calm her down. She was shaking. Finally, she calmed down and told me what was wrong. She said that there was a woman in the corner just staring at her. The woman was dressed all in black and had really long black hair and dark red eyes. That night she slept in my bed with me. I put up rosary beads around the house and said out loud while my girl was at school to please leave us alone and that they were scaring my daughter. Since that day, nothing has happened, so I think whoever or whatever it was just left. 2. Recently, my younger brother and I have been watching old family videos from when we were little. You know, those typical super cute video clips filled with fun memories. The videos start from just before my brother was born, when we were moving house, and continue through until my brother was about 3 years old or so. Throughout the videos we watched my brother grow up, start crawling, walking, talking, and playing. He was around 2 or 3 years old and was speaking in short sentences when things began to get creepy. In one of the videos my brother was crying and pleading with the person filming, most of them were filmed by our grandmother, to make the man go away. He kept saying this over and over again. You can hear my grandmother behind the camera laugh and say, "What man? Who are you talking about? The man in the corner, make the man go away?" "Show me the man," my grandmother said, and my brother grabbed her hand and pulled her into his room. "The man in the corner," he cried, pointing to the corner of his room. The camera panned the room. It was completely empty. "There's no one there. Don't be silly," our grandmother said, trying to calm my brother down. "No, the man!" he cried. "Mad-faced man, I don't like. He kept pointing and looking at the corner. The video shortly ended. My brother and I weren't sure what to think of this. He couldn't remember it, and I'm not much older than him, so I didn't remember it either. We called our mother into the room and rewound the tape so that she could watch it. Our mother looked a little shocked, like this was triggering a memory she didn't know she had forgotten. "You used to say that all the time," my mother said to my brother. "You were terrified of the man in the corner. You hardly ever slept in that room because you would be so worried about the man. You said the man would always watch you, with his mad face." We asked her where this fear came from, and she didn't know. No one had ever seen the man my brother was so frightened of. And we moved again when he was around 4. This is the really creepy part, though. My mother did add that she had occasionally spoken to her next-door neighbor, who was an elderly woman who had lived in the house next to ours for years. She had known the previous owner. Apparently, he was an older male who lived alone. He wasn't overly neighborly, but the impression this woman gave our mother was that he had rather a mean and grumpy demeanor. According to the woman, the man had developed cancer and had refused treatment. He ended up dying in the house, in the room at the end of the hall, my brother's old room. I've heard of children being more perceptive to this sort of thing than adults. I wonder if my brother actually did see the spirit of the man who died in our house. Maybe he didn't like a little boy playing in his place of rest. 3. First off, I'm Norwegian, and English is my second language, so my English may not be top-notch. You are warned. Now let's get to the fun part. In Norway we have a kind of school that is for us that want to take a year off, but still want something to do or learn something. There is no homework, tests, or exams. Super fun. I took a photography course, adding to my skills from before. I think the school I attended was close to 100 years old. But before that, the property belonged to a large family living in a mansion that still stands and is used as living space for the teachers. And they have their bedrooms there. Sadly, this mansion burned down once before, taking the wife and all of their kids with it. I got to know one of my very best friends there, and that's how it all started. At the beginning, I shared a room with someone I didn't have anything in common with, and I didn't quite like her, sorry to say it. So I slept over at my best friend's room. Let's call her Maya. Now let me tell you that every story I tell you is real. It all happened, and that year was a crazy ride. Some things may be too far-fetched for some of you to believe, and that's okay. I won't blame you, but try to keep an open mind. Enough backstory. I want to start from the very beginning of the year, so these stories are very light, and nothing much happened really. I'll save a better one for my next thread. One night around 2:30 we still hadn't fallen asleep, and we had just finished up our nightly talk, like good friends tend to do before falling asleep. I was drifting into a very comfortable sleep, and the sensation I get when a spirit is close came sneaking upon me. I have been able to sense spirits and their mood, age, sex, since I was a kid, so this was completely normal to me. I shrugged it off. Then the faintest tapping noise could be heard. I spent some long seconds listening to it, and then Maya said, "Do you hear that?" "Yeah," I responded. It was hard to pinpoint where it came from. At first it sounded like a horse walking, but far enough away that it barely could be heard. It could also sound like it came from inside the wall or from the neighboring room. It could also sound like someone was barely tapping their fingertip on the wooden walls. I still hadn't told Maya about me sensing spirits, but I eventually told her this after several nights of the same tapping sound. The tapping started and ended at the exact same time every night. Another day, me and Maya were at the old sewing room. We had been given the awesome task of sewing curtains for a play. Yeah, not that fun. The dance studio was on the same floor as the sewing room, and we started to hear loud bumping noises from the dance studio. We checked several times, but none of the dance students were using it. Lights were off and no one there. The bumps and bangs occasionally came closer to us, and Maya was getting uncomfortable. I was a bit more used to this, and I didn't mind finishing up our curtains before heading out there. But here comes the fun part. Suddenly the radio in the sewing room turned on really loud, with Johnny Cash and Hurt. The batteries were out, and the power was not connected. It was an old radio. I got startled at first, but then I started to enjoy myself because I have good memories of this song with another good friend. Maya wanted to bail, so we did. Every time I hear that song now, it takes me back to that room in the dance students' building, and the good and bad memories of that school year. These are the first encounters we had at that school, and it is nothing special compared to what we ended up encountering. Eventually I taught her how to communicate, because she was way more spiritually receptive than she knew, and we had conversations with several spirits. Helped some over, calmed the angry ones, except one or two really bad ones, and got in touch with some of our guardian angels and helpers, whatever you like to call them. Through an awesome, kind and protective spirit we got to know. There were also encounters with spirits and situations that were a bit more on the creepy and scary side. 4. The whole block I live in used to be a cemetery in the 1920s. There was a big storm and the remains of the people buried in the cemetery washed out, and someone bought the land to build houses on it. Thus my block was born. My family and I have had various experiences in this house, but this post will focus on one experience in particular. There are 2 bedrooms in my house. My sister and I share one, and my parents have the other, with ours right in front. One morning during breakfast, my mom told me that she could not sleep at all the night before. That wasn't something out of the ordinary, as she suffers from insomnia and often has to take sleeping pills. Then she said that she had to talk to me privately without my little sister in the room. I thought I was in some sort of trouble, but that wasn't the case at all. When my sister left the kitchen to shower, my mom told me what really happened the night before. She said that she was laying in bed playing games on her tablet, when from the corner of her eye she saw someone peek into her room from the hallway. She thought it was one of us, me or my sister, walking to the bathroom, so she didn't think anything of it. But then she saw someone peek around the door again, and this time she looked up. Since she thought it was one of us, was prepared to tell us to go back to bed. However, when she got up and walked to her door, she found there was nobody there. She said that she came into our room and was confused when both my sister and I were sound asleep in our beds. She decided to dismiss it and just go back to bed. A little while later she saw a person peeking into her room again, but this time they walked into her room. It was a woman. It looked like she was wearing a beige-colored nightgown or dress, seemed to float around her bed, to her side, and just stared at my mom. My mom said that she wanted to scream, get up and run, but she couldn't. She just stayed there frozen in place, and forced to look at this woman in front of her. My mom said that the woman was wearing a purple headband that was glowing in the dark. My mom took particular notice of this because it was the only colored thing about the figure. Then the woman floated out and never came back. My mom stayed in bed until the sun came up, because she was too afraid to do anything else. She urged me not to tell this to my little sister, and I complied. I knew my sister couldn't handle something like that. Everything scares her, and I thought that was the end of the story, but it wasn't. At the time I was 14 years old and getting things ready for my quinceañera. My mother and I had purchased a lot of different kinds of glow sticks and glow bracelets and necklaces to give out to my guests during the dance portion of my quinceañera. We had been buying them little by little and adding them into one big bag and storing it in the back laundry room. One day my mom asked me to go get the bag of glow stuff because she wanted to count how many we had and how many more we needed to buy. When I went back to get the bag, I couldn't find it anywhere. When I told my mom I couldn't find it, she got mad because she thought I was being lazy and didn't want to look for it. So she sent me to look for it again, and once again, I didn't find anything. So my mom went to go look for the bag, and she couldn't find it either. Neither could my sister or my mom's best friend. So we just gave up and started buying more. This happened before the experience my mom had, and at the time I didn't think anything of it. Then a while after my mom had her experience, I was getting a shirt from the back laundry room, and found the bag of glow stuff, right where I had left it on the metal rack. I grabbed the bag of glow things and took it to my mom to show her my find. We opened the big bag to see the contents of the bag, to find that one of the packs of glow bracelets was open, and one of the 3 that were supposed to be in there was missing. I knew my mom or sister hadn't opened it and taken one, because we couldn't find the bag to begin with, and obviously neither had I. We dismissed the open pack and missing glow bracelet as just, oh, maybe we did take one and just didn't remember. However, later on that day, my mom told me that she knew that the woman she had seen in her room was the one who took the glow bracelet. I thought she was just being silly and trying to get me scared for no reason. But she kept on insisting, saying that now the purple glowing headband on the woman's head made sense, that she must have taken it and placed it there, and that's why we couldn't find the bag anywhere. All in all, we never found the missing glow bracelet, nor has anybody admitted to taking it. My mom hasn't seen the woman again either, or at least that I know of. 5. So my mom used to live in a house that we all swore was haunted. I probably saw the least amount of activity there, but then I didn't visit that often during this period. But I did experience some things, and hear second-hand accounts from my mom, her boyfriend, and my sister, who all lived there. The first known instance of paranormal activity in the house was experienced by my mom's boyfriend when he first bought the house and started renovating it. While he was painting a room, he saw someone in his peripheral vision walking up the stairs towards him, and assumed it was his friend who lived down the street, so he told him to grab a beer. When there was no response, he looked, saw his friend wasn't there, and then called his cell to ask where he went. His friend was nowhere near the house. He figured he was just seeing things and wrote it off as weird. Then my mom and sister moved in. My sister's bedroom was the attic, and she kept complaining that she felt like she was being watched up there. While my sister was at my house where I lived with our dad, my mom's boyfriend decided to go into her room and try to see if he could record anything paranormal. He asked a few questions, left, and listened to the recording. None of his questions were answered, but at one point he heard a female voice say, "Funny." He didn't tell my sister about this recording for years. I myself experienced a few weird things. Sometimes in my sister's room when I was alone, I'd have the feeling of being watched, but it wasn't as intense as it was in their bathroom. I felt like something was in there with me all the time. I hated taking showers at my mom's house for this reason. My cell phone went missing, and turned up in the bathtub once. When I was in the basement, even if I wasn't alone, I got this feeling of hatred, like something was down there and it positively hated me. More on the basement in a moment. At one point my sister tried to use the bathroom, but saw someone pulling the door shut and figured it was my mom's boyfriend. So she went downstairs to wait for him to get out. When he was taking a long time, she commented on this to Mom, and Mom said that her boyfriend wasn't even home. When my sister went back upstairs, the door was wide open. My mom also said she experienced creepy weirdness. She mentioned having the same feelings about the basement that I did. There were 2 portions to the basement, a finished part and an unfinished part that had a dirt floor and was used for storage. There was a gap in between the wall between the 2 portions, so you could look directly into the other, particularly if you were doing laundry. My mom hated this because she felt like there was someone in that dirt room that didn't like her. I did not like this dirt floor part, particularly since I'd been left there alone to fish out some Christmas decorations, and felt eyes on me the entire time. One final experience at this house was when they were moving out. My mom was packing, was getting ready to use the bathroom, and then all of a sudden there was a whoosh down the hallway and she saw my sister run up the stairs and into the bathroom like a bat out of hell. The door slammed shut. She figured my sister just really had to go and didn't think anything of it, until she heard a noise in the kitchen. Assuming her boyfriend was home from work early, she went to talk to him and found my sister getting food in the kitchen. She went back upstairs and the door was wide open. No one else was home. I don't know for certain what happened in that house, but given its age and location in a bad neighborhood, plus the state it was in when my mom's boyfriend bought it, I suspect that something violent happened there at one point. My personal theory is that someone was murdered on those stairs or in that bathroom. Recalling the dirt floor, part of me fears that there might be a body buried under there or something, but that part is a theory. I have no actual evidence of it. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 96. Thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I'll just give you the weekly reminder. I'll probably keep giving you that right up till episode 99. I forgot to do it last week. But if you have any questions you'd like for the Q&A I'm going to put at the end of episode 100 of Paranormal Stories, please do just pop them in the comment section of any video. Probably that week's Paranormal is the easiest, but whatever the most recent video is, that's absolutely fine. I usually do a sweep about once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. Okay, and I think that'll wrap us up for now. So, until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.